mission, you can see, launch a clear path to financial empowerment. And my name is Rebecca Miller. I work in career ed. We're happy that you're joining us here, and even happier that we have a guest, Ariel Nathanson, who is a former Wellesley alum, class of 2010, I think, right? And so Ariel is and I had to write it down to make sure I got it right here, certified financial education instructor, and she's also the founder of Finances for Feminists. So she's going to have a lot of great advice for you tonight and a clear path to financial empowerment. And I think with that, I will leave it to Ariel. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Becca. And thank you to the Wellesley Career Education Department for having me. Thank you guys all for being here, for showing up. As Becca mentioned, my name is Ariel Nathanson, and I also went to Wellesley. I was sitting where you were a long time ago, so 2010, but it's great to be back in this new beautiful building and here with you all today. So today we're going to talk about getting you to a clear path to financial empowerment, and I'm going to show you 3 steps to get there. And I assume as Wellesley students you're wondering, are we going to get the slide deck for this? And yes, you are, and not only that, but there will be a recording, so don't worry, you don't need to take copious notes, but you're welcome to if you want to. So to kick this off, I just wanted to share what financial empowerment means to me, because you might be wondering, what does financial empowerment mean? Well, to me, it's 2 sides of the same coin. On the one hand, we have the analytical side. That's your spreadsheets, your calculations, all you folks that love those spreadsheets and filters and things in Excel. But on the other hand, we also have the mindfulness piece. So that's mindful-based spending, values-based spending, being in touch with your emotions. And to me, it requires both halves to be financially whole. So oftentimes, if you're Googling something, you might get one or the other, but getting both is really hard. And to me, both together will make you financially whole and help you towards financial empowerment. So we're going to do a little bit of both today. But to kick things off, I thought it'd be fun to play a quick game of 2 truths and a lie. So what I'm going to do is read you 3 statements. I'll read them through once. And I'll read them through again, and I want you to raise your hands on which of the 3 statements you think is the lie. All right, so here they are. Statement A, women are statistically proven to be better investors than men. All right, statement B, before 1974, women could not take out a line of credit in their own names. Statement C, 20% of women would rather talk about their own debts than discuss money. I see some smiles here, and some smiles over the masks. All right, so show of hands. Who thinks statement A is the lie? All right, show of hands. Who thinks statement B is the lie? And who thinks statement C? Wow, damn guys, all right. Okay, well let's see. Statement A is true. Women are statistically proven to be better investors than men, and apparently you guys already knew this, so that's great. So there are many, many studies that prove this. I'm citing the Warwick Business School study from the UK. Essentially what it shows is when the stock market is volatile, which we know it does, that's normal, it ebbs and flows, there's ups and downs and peaks and lows, men tend to try to dodge the market and get out of those losses and change plans. And as a result, they lock in their losses. Women stockbrokers, on the other hand, have a clear vision, stick the path, and therefore they have better outcomes than their male counterparts. So, pretty cool. Unfortunately, statement B is also true. So before 1974, when we got the Equal Credit Opportunities Act, shout out to RBG, may she rest in peace. Before then, if I, as a woman, went to a bank and I said, hey, I need a mortgage because I want to buy a house. I need a car loan because I want to get a car. I need a credit card because I want a credit card. I could be denied legally. It was legal for banks to deny me just because of my gender. So they could say, you know what, you need to come back with your brother or your dad or some other dude, and then we'll give it to you. So we are very grateful for the 1974 Equal Credit Opportunities Act. So today we can do those things as women and not be discriminated against. Now you guys all knew this already, so statement C is the lie, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately because it's not 20%, it's actually 61% of women would rather talk about their own debt than discuss money. So that's almost 2/3 of women. That's a lot, right? So it makes sense though when you think from a societal standpoint, it's still taboo or considered impolite or rude to talk about money. So it makes sense why people aren't really comfortable doing that. But the good news is you guys are here in this room today and you're helping to change that statistic just by showing up, just by being here. So, very exciting. You may ask, well, Ariel, why should I care? Isn't money evil and dirty and terrible? And like, I don't know, I don't really think it's a good idea for me to care about this. I would argue the opposite. I believe financial empowerment gives you choice, freedom, flexibility, and control. So what does this look like? Well, if you're in a toxic relationship, it allows you to leave. 99% of domestic violence cases are also tied to financial abuse. So having that kind of financial cushion is really key to have other options to leave. Similarly, if you're in a workspace that isn't working for you, a job that isn't working out, and you want to change jobs, you want to take a pay cut, maybe you just want some time to figure out what's next, money can help you do that. And on the flip side, it can help you have fun, right? You can have Wellesley reunions with your friends, come to campus, do whatever you want to do. But essentially, it's really important to understand in order to take control of your lives and your financial empowerment. So I really feel strongly about this. That's why I have a business around it. My name is Ariel, like I said at the top. I'm the founder of Finances for Feminists, where I provide one-on-one personal finance coaching for women, and I also work with couples. And my personal signature coaching program is called Finance Fundamentals, and it's 3 months long where I cover everything from budgeting to retirement 101, investing 101, and everything in between. And I work with women in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Everyone tells me the same thing on the older half of that spectrum. They all say, I wish I had known this when I was 20 years old. So, bravo guys, you're already ahead of the game. Okay, so today we're going to talk about those 3 steps that I mentioned to get you to financial empowerment. The first step is I'm going to talk to you about creating a spending plan, and I'm going to teach you a specific framework called the 50-30-20 spending framework. Now, within the spending plan, we have your expenses, so that's kind of what you're spending your money on, and then we have your savings, or what you're kind of saving for. So step 2, I'm going to talk to you about tracking your expenses mindfully, and I'm going to teach you how to do this in a really easy, low-key way that you can do at any point. Actually, any of these things you can do at any point, except for step 3, which is the savings side of that equation. So within the spending plan, we have the spending mindfully piece, and then we have the savings side. I'm going to talk to you about investing early and why this matters. And at the end, we should have time for question and answer, but if at any point you guys have questions along the way, feel free to raise your hand. Happy to answer them.
I just want to comment that we are videotaping, just in case anybody in terms of your voice will be on the videotaping. Just so you know.
Yes, thank you to our videographer. All right, so what exactly is a spending plan? You guys may say, this sounds an awful lot like a budget, Ariel. Well, you'd be right. It is a budget. I just like this term because it's more exciting in terms of what do I get to spend my money on, whereas budget is constricting and restrictive and makes people have the heebie-jeebies. So I like to talk about it as a spending plan. And a spending plan is a system that proactively aligns your income with your goals and your expenses. So it's really balancing out both of those things. Now, how can it help you? As I mentioned earlier, it can really help you flip your mindset to that abundant way of thinking. What do I get to spend my money on? That's cool, right? As opposed to, I'm on a budget, I can't do anything fun, sorry, I'm gonna have to stay in. It can help you spend with intention because you're being mindful about what you're spending your money on. And protect you from lifestyle creep. So, you're living in the dorms, you move out, you live with some roommates, you move out, you get your own apartment, you move out, you get your own house, now you want a house with a yard, now you want a house with a car, now you want 2 houses, 2 cars, you get where I'm going with this. A spending plan keeps you from spending beyond your means and really keeps you from lifestyle creep, which we as Americans all struggle with. It also helps bake in long-term goals with shorter-term reality. So long-term goals, things like your retirement goals, and long-term savings goals, along with the reality of, hey, I gotta pay rent, right? So these are ways that it can help. It also gives you concrete framework on actual dollar amounts. So a lot of the clients that I work with say, Ariel, I have so much problem with my spending, I'm just all over the place, like I really need to rein it in. And then we look at their actual spending and we look at their spending plan and it's totally fine. They're actually doing okay. And so it can help you align and ground your emotions with reality. So if you're someone who has a hard time spending money on yourself, maybe some of you are like that, maybe some of you aren't, but can help you ground you in reality with like, okay, but where does this actual dollar amount fit in with my spending plan? All right, so let's talk about the 50-30-20 rule of thumb. This was popularized by Senator Elizabeth Warren and her daughter in their book called All Your Worth, and it essentially allocates your budget in 3 loose buckets. So 50% of your post-tax monthly income goes towards essential expenses. Now essential, that's things like rent and utilities and all that good stuff. And the next slide I'm going to go into more examples on this. 30% of your post-tax monthly income is going to go towards discretionary spending. That's fun stuff, right? That's going out to eat. That's your Netflix account. And then 20% is towards savings. So that's things like your rainy day fund, your retirement, all that good stuff. Now, these guidelines can be adjusted according to your specific circumstances. So let's say you are 22, you graduated Wellesley, you're moving to New York City, you're excited, but man, that is an expensive city. So it turns out your essential expenses are more like 60% of your post-tax monthly income. Well, you can adjust your discretionary spending down to 20%, and then you're evened out. So it's a more flexible framework. Unlike some other budgets where you are very specific and granular, where I'm going to spend $40 to go to the movies this month, but then I don't go to the movies this month. So what happens to that $40? And then I ended up eating out more. You don't have to move money around here. It's very loose and high-level buckets, which I find works well for a lot of my clients. So what are some examples of these categories? All right, so essential expenses. We've got things like rent. Your utilities, you're going to have to start paying things like electricity and gas if you guys are living on your own. Your cell phone plan. Minimum debt payments, so if you have student loans and you're paying them back, the minimum amount will go here. Other minimum debt payments will go here as well. Groceries, any medication co-pays or health insurance. Those are all essential expenses. And essential doesn't mean that you value it more or less. So I have a yoga membership, I really like it, it feels very valuable to me, but it's not essential. If I needed to, I could cut that expense. Now, 30% fun money, those are things like your meals and your takeout. That's your lemon Thai. You guys still have lemon Thai, right? Oh yeah, okay, good. Chicken and love for me. So there's streaming services, your Hulu, your Spotify, your Netflix, New York Times, Wordle, whatever floats your boat. Drinks with friends, any hobbies. So I really like to spend my money on books, so I put that here. Clothes and shopping, non-essential. So if you're scrolling through your social media outlet of choice, TikTok, whatever, and you see some cute athleisure wear, that would go here. If you need to buy underwear and socks, that's essential, right? So there are some things that are a little bit grayer, but loosely, this framework is pretty clear. Now the 20% savings category. First and foremost, I want you guys to prioritize the emergency savings or your rainy day fund. That's most important, and we're gonna have a whole slide devoted to this next time. And then, so next we also have the retirement long-term savings contribution bucket, and that is gonna be something that we're kind of talking about in step 3. Anything above the minimum debt payments, so if you have a car loan and you want to go above and beyond, you're paying more than the minimum, that additional amount is considered in the savings category. And other life goals, maybe you want to save up for a down payment on a house. Those types of things will go here as well. All right, so I said I was going to talk a little bit more about the rainy day fund. So rainy day funds are basically emergency savings. And the pandemic taught everyone that we really can't predict the future, and we may think things are secure, but who knows what's going to happen. So the great thing about the rainy day fund is when if stuff happens, which it will, because life is complicated, you don't have to worry about the financial side as much. You can focus on the situation at hand itself. So I want you guys to have this financial cushion and prioritize that. So you want to start small, saving up to $1,000 or 1 month's essential expenses, whichever is greater. And pro tip here, if you guys are working towards a savings goal, I recommend setting up recurring transfers. So the reason for that is because willpower is, we rely on it too much. It's a lot easier to set up yourself for success by deciding what you want to do with your money, setting up automatic transfers, and then you don't have to figure out, oh, at the end of the month, do I have enough money left? Can I make this work? You've already put in the foundations in place to make those decisions for you early on. So you want to build up to 3 to 6 months essential expenses in your emergency savings fund. Some people like 9 months, some people like a year, but you guys are just starting off, so that's a good thing to start with, a good goal. And I do want to add that this should not interfere with your debt repayment or essential expenses. So you want to make sure you prioritize your essential expenses first, and then you can prioritize this. I don't want anyone defaulting on any loans or anything like that because they're prioritizing this. So make sure you cover your essential expenses first, and then you can work towards your rainy day fund. And another pro tip, lots of pro tips on this slide, it's a good idea to keep this in a high yield savings account. So high yield savings account earn a little bit more interest than checking and savings account in other banks. It's not much, you're not gonna get rich off this, but the point is that it's easily accessible. So when and if something happens, you don't have to wait for a bank transfer. It'll take 3 to 5 business days for this to reach your account. You can easily withdraw the funds. And similarly, it's not in the stock market where the volatility may cause the funds to shrink. You don't have to worry about that either. All right, so let's see this in action. So this is a real client that I work with. I changed her name and age, but this is her salary and she does live in LA. So I'm calling her Sally and I'm saying she's 23. But this slide, I thought, if I were you guys, what would I want to have in the slide deck? This specific example you can use as the formula. So when you guys have your first job or when you're figuring this out, here's a framework that you can just see how it works with this specific example. So the first thing we're going to do is calculate that monthly post-tax income. So what you do is you take your paycheck. So Sally gets paid bi-weekly, which is basically every 2 weeks. And this is her post-tax paycheck amount. So there are 26 pay periods in the calendar year 2022. So to figure out what she makes for the year, again, this is post-tax, we just multiply that 1,825 by 26. So she makes about $47,000 post-tax for the calendar year. And to figure out her monthly amount, we divide that by 12. So the post-tax monthly income is $3,954. If you hung with me this far, you're already basically there. Okay, so now we know what that denominator is, what we're working with. Is that $4,000, that's her monthly post-tax income. So to figure out the essential expenses benchmark, we're just gonna multiply that by 0.5. So she's got about $2,000 that she's gonna be playing with for her essential expenses. So she wants her groceries in there, her rent, all that good stuff. And then her fun money is gonna be about $1,186. So you can have a lot of fun with that. If you think about it, it's like $300 a week, lots of fun money. And then her savings rate ends up being about $790. So that's what she's gonna be targeting for her savings goals. So you can use this proactively. If you have a job and you're trying to figure out, where does my rent fit in with my budget and how much should I be spending, you can do this math and figure out, okay, well, this place is too expensive. I think I need a roommate here, or cost of living here is really cheap. This makes sense for me. Or you can do it retroactively. So if you're living in a place and you want to figure out how does my current expenses align with this framework, you can sort of map it against here. All right, any questions about the spending plan and the 50-30-20 rule? Okay. All right, so next we're gonna talk about mindful spending. And mindful spending is just a framework to check in with your emotions for any purchase that you're making. It's really a tool to help you be in the present moment, and it rewires our brains to connect our emotions with our purchases to make us more conscious consumers. So this day and age with one-click shopping and credit cards, it's really easy to be disconnected from our spending. So mindful spending really grounds us in the present moment there and reconnects us with our spending. So mindful spending can help you turn towards, acknowledge, and validate what currently is in order to move forward. So if you want to change your habits or change your spending habits, you have to know what your spending habits are in the first place, right? So this is helping you figure that out. It's building awareness and helping you feel more connected and in touch with your spending. And it can also help you identify spending behaviors that you want to shift. So let's say you have your first job and you're going to work every day and you're working in the office and it's exciting and you're getting lunch out with your coworkers every day. And then you do this exercise and you realize, I don't really feel great about that. And I think I might feel better served both for my wallet and my health if I pack lunch twice a week. So that's an example of sometimes we go through autopilot and end up doing things where we don't really understand the repercussions, and this really grounds you so that you're more mindful. Ultimately, it will also help you save money because there are like recurring transfers and things that are going to hit your cards if you have any sort of streaming services or things that auto-renew. Sometimes things hit our cards and we don't even realize that they're on there. So it's a good way to check, hey, like, okay, I didn't realize this Hulu subscription was on here. Good to know, now I'm going to cancel it. It also helps you save money because you're more in touch with your emotions around your purchases. So you're only spending money on the things that you want to spend money on rather than mindlessly spending. And ultimately it will help you use money on the things you value most, because what is the point of money if not to help us live the life we want to lead? All right, so this is the spending framework. Very simple, very straightforward, intentionally so. So you just want to record your expense transactions for 1 month. Now, why 1 month? Well, things like rent are at the beginning of the month and other expenses fall throughout the month. So we want to try to capture a full month. It doesn't have to be, the first of the month through the last of the month. It can be like the 15th through the 15th. But loosely, we want a month of spending captured. So when we're doing this exercise, we can record the date of the transaction. That's whenever the transaction either hits your card or whenever it happens. The item itself. So if you guys buy something on Amazon, write down what it was. So buying toilet paper and buying fuzzy slippers are very different. So we want to make sure that we identify what the item is. And then the dollar amount. And then lastly, for discretionary or optional purchases, this is where the mindfulness piece comes in. I want you to check in with your emotions. And just real quickly, do I feel positively, negative, or neutral about this purchase? And this is for discretionary purchases only, because as much as I would love not to pay my rent, that's not really an option for me. So focusing on your emotions around things that you have control over is a great place to start. Now, there's no fancy app needed. I think technology can be a barrier to financial empowerment. A lot of people feel like, I need to hook this all up and get everything in neat little rows. This is very low tech, and it's intentionally that way. You can use a piece of paper and a pen to do this. You can use a journal. You can use a spreadsheet if you want. But the point is, you can do it at any point, and it's very, very easy. So this is what my mindful spending exercise looks like just for this week. This is just a snapshot. Again, this is my discretionary spending, so it's not anything essential. But earlier in the week, I got a latte. It's $5.84. I love a good latte. And when I asked myself, am I feeling positive, negative, or neutral about this, I feel positive about it. It really helped to strengthen my relationships with my friends. I got to see my friends. That felt good. The next day, I got takeout, and I didn't feel great about this because the delivery was really expensive, and I just wish I had picked it up at the restaurant. Not to mention I already had food in my fridge. So didn't feel great about that. Going to be more mindful about how much I'm eating out. I got a coat rack. Felt really good about that because my husband and I moved into a new house last year, and it feels really good to sort of put that up and walk and see it in our entryway. Makes me smile. And then our Hulu subscription hit, which I did not realize that it was still on there, so I'm going to prioritize canceling that subscription because I don't watch the shows anymore. I used to watch Only Murders in the Building, but it's over. Did you guys watch that show? Yeah, it's good. Okay. All right. So this is an example of what that looks like. And again, the point is to be more mindful of our spending. Any questions about mindful spending? All right. So, next section we have here is all about the importance of investing early. So, I'm going to ask you guys a fun question, and I want to show hands here too. So, show of hands. I'll say the question first. So, would you rather have $100,000 today, right now, or 1 penny that doubles each day for 1 month, and you get that amount at the end of the month? Okay, I'll repeat it and then I'll ask. Okay, so would you rather have $100,000 right now today? Oprah walks in this door and says, you have $100,000, do you have $100,000? Or 1 penny that doubles each day for 1 month, and you get that amount at the end of the month. Okay, who wants $100,000 right now? Yeah, amazing, bird in hand, love it, okay. All right, who wants to wait for that penny? Interesting. All right, let's see what happens. All right, so day 1, that penny's a penny. Day 2, that penny is 2 cents. Day 3, 4 cents. Day 4, 8 cents. I'm not going to read all of these, don't worry. But you can see day 14 and day 15, we surpassed the $100 mark. And then we surpassed our 100K friends around day 24, day 25. Day 25, that penny has grown to $335,000. Day 26. Day 27, it's grown to $671,000. Day 28, $1.3 million. Whoa, we just surpassed 1 million, guys. Day 29, $2.68 million, and day 30, $5.368 million. So I think I'll take the penny. All right, so what is going on here? It's this wonderful thing called compound interest, and Albert Einstein said the most powerful force in the universe is compound interest, so we know that's a big deal. So compound interest is when an asset's earnings, things like capital gains or interest, are reinvested to earn additional gains over time. So I'm using a little bit rounder numbers here to give you guys an example. So let's say I put $1,000 in the stock market and it's earning 10% interest. Now this is just an example. The stock market is volatile, it goes woo, 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 right? So some years it may be like up 20%, some years it may be down 10%, but overall the average for the last 50 years in the stock market has been 10% annualized returns, and then you have to take into account inflation. But I wanted to tell you guys this because if you invest and you're like, Ariel, I didn't get my 10% back, it was like -10. That's normal, this is normal. The trajectory is up though, right? Okay, so $1,000 I put it in, and I let it sit for a year, and that 10% interest grows that $1,000 to $1,100. Let that sit for a year, let it hang out. Now it grows to $1,210. Let that sit, and that grows to $1,331. I put in 1,000, I didn't touch it, I let it sit, I let it hang out, and it just grew to 331. So that's compound interest. Now, why does this matter for you guys? Well, when you start investing matters, and the good thing is time is on your side. So in this example, we have Alicia and Beth. They invest the same amount of money, $120,000. They retire at the same age. They both retire at age 65. The only difference is Alicia invests at age 25, whereas Beth waits to invest until she's 45. Now let's see what happens to that $120K that they both put in. Alicia's $120K, because it has an extra 20 years, grows 3 times as much to $361,000. Go Alicia. Beth invests $120,000, but she's waiting until she's 45, so that does not even double. It goes to $210,000. Okay? Here's another way to look at this. This chart shows the impact of when you start investing, even if you stop. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not telling anyone to stop investing. The purpose of this chart is just to show you how important when you start investing is. So the blue line is Jill, and Jill is only investing between the ages of 25 and 35. So she's only investing for 10 years, and she's only putting in $24,000. Jamie, on the other hand, is investing $72,000 between the ages of 35 and 65. So 3 times as much over the course of 30 years, a third over the course of 10 years. Now see where they both end up at age 65. Jill, even though she put in a third as much as Jamie did, ends up closer to $300,000, whereas Jamie, even though she puts in 3 times as much, is closer to $250,000. So time matters, right? Now the great thing is you guys all share the gift of time. That's amazing, right? You can do this, right? You can be like Alicia. Now you may say, wow, I'm like really not at my earning potential, or like I'm, it's always when we're younger and we're earning less that it's harder to save, but even just a little bit counts. So I just want to plant that seed. So if you take away anything from all this, just know that when you start investing matters, and you can be like Jamie, you can be like Jill. Jamie's okay, but I want you to be like Jill. Or you could be like Alicia. You guys have the gift of time on your side. Now, I also want to share that investing is a 3-step process, okay? So let's say I'm opening up an account, and I'm going to open up a Roth IRA, which is a tax-advantaged retirement account. Government says, oh man, it's really hard to retire, it's so expensive, we're going to give you some incentives. So I'm opening up a Roth IRA. You guys heard of that account before? Yeah? Okay. All right. So step 1, I open the account. Step 2, I fund the account. So the maximum amount for 2022 for Roth IRAs was $6,000. So I put all that money in and like, oh, I'm excited, feel good about myself, ready to retire. Am I done? No. I have to do step 3. Step 3 is so important. I have to pick what I'm investing in. Otherwise, my $6,000 is just sitting in cash, doesn't get to take advantage of any of that compound interest. It's just hanging out there, just $6,000, not growing, not doing anything. And actually, it's losing money because of inflation, but we don't need to get into that. I just want you guys to know that step 3 is key. So let's do it another way. All right, so you guys are going to your first job, you're opening your 401k, you put your money in it. What do? We pick what we're putting our money in. So that's a target date fund, or you'll get a list of investments from your employer. But the point is, you make sure that your money is in something. It's not just opening an account and funding it, you have to also pick your investments. Does that make sense? Okay, all right. You guys survived, you made it to the end. Hopefully it wasn't too hard. So just to recap, the 3 steps we talked about creating a spending plan, that overarching spending plan. And we talked about using the 50-30-20 allocation. We also talked about the importance of a rainy day fund and prioritizing that, and the importance of prioritizing retirement and long-term savings. Those are your investments. We also talked about step 2, which is mindful spending, and I gave you guys a framework to do that. That's very easy and straightforward, so you can be more conscious consumers and more in touch with your spending. And then we talked about the importance of investing early and how time is on your side. You guys can be like Alicia and I think it was Jen. So if you're like me, if you nerd out on personal finance stuff, or if you just like gardening stuff, this is gardening theme. I have a free guide to financial wellness on my website. You guys will get this slide deck, but I also have a QR code here. It's called A Gardening Guide to Your Money, How to Cultivate Financial Wellness. It talks about what we talked about today in a little more detail. It talks more about 401k matches. It talks more about cultivating a rainy day savings and all that good stuff. It's free, so feel free to check it out. And at that point, we wrap it up. So happy to take questions if you guys have any. Yeah?
So with the mindful spending, reporting your expense transactions for 1 month, you do that every month or just?
Yeah, great question. So I only make people do it for 1 month and then they can stop. The reason is it starts to rewire your brain, so you get in the habit of like, oh, like, do I actually want to drink this latte, or like, do I actually want to spend this? If you want to track it for longer, like, by all means go for it. But I find most people it's kind of cumbersome because it's a lot of work to write down everything you spend money on. But yeah, great question. The other thing people might think about is, oh, well, that doesn't capture all my expenses because I bought a wedding ticket, this day, and I had Christmas gifts that day. And that's true, right? We have ad hoc things that come up. But again, the point of the mindful spending framework is to get your brain in that habit so that you can start being more conscious. And if you want to track your spending for longer, like, go for it. That's great. Yeah, great question. Yeah?
This is a lot of questions. But
Oh, yeah,
wondering,
got time. Yeah, go for it.
when it comes to selecting your investments,
Yes.
In general, when you were talking, I was wondering, how does one do that?
Yes.
And also,
Yeah.
if you recommend, like, I've been using the Acorn app for a
Yeah,
while. I
great.
put barely anything in there, but
That's
it's
okay.
in there.
That's okay.
And so I was wondering also, like, they say, okay, I have a Roth IRA right now. Like, do I have to pick a real thing, or can I just put it into Acorn? Like, how does that? I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I'm assuming I can't use Acorn, but yeah, just how do you pick things?
Yes, okay, great question. So how do you pick your investments? Blah, scary, right? Okay, so I cannot tell you how to pick your investments. I don't have those credentials. You have to be a certified financial planner. I'm a certified financial educator, but I will tell you some like free investing 101 educational sharing, and you guys can do with it what you want. Okay, so some things to think about with your investments. So for retirement funds, there's something called a target date fund. What that means is that the target date is the date that you're like shooting to retire. It doesn't mean like you have to retire around this year. It's just like, yeah, I'll be 65. I don't know when you guys will be 65, but in the future, right? So a target date essentially shifts your accounts because I'm trying to like give you the information without making it a fire hose situation. Okay, so with investing, there's the stock market, so that's investing in companies. So if you have an equity, you're in a company, and that's more volatile. That's riskier, right? Because companies, like, when they go up and down, it's riskier. Then the other side of that is the bond market. Now that's a little bit more safer, but with the safety of investing in the bond market, that's like, the US Treasury bond. So you're having a contract with a state or government or a company, and they're like, hey, thanks for loaning us money. Like, here's a little bit of interest. We appreciate you. But bonds are, and I know this is a fire hose information, I'm sorry. So you guys can write this down because I don't have a slide on this. But bonds are lower yield, which means we get less return for them. But as a result, they're less risky, right? Stock markets are higher return, but they're more risky. So that's an inherent part of investing. More risk, more return, less risk, less return. So what target date funds do, and you guys, I'm sharing this because that's a common thing that you're gonna see if you're investing in like a company's sponsored plan, like a 401k, they'll often, this is what was given to me as options, but they'll be like, here's all your target date funds. So target date funds essentially shift your portfolio. So as you get closer to that age that you want to retire, that 65 age or whenever you picked, it'll shift your portfolio from the stock market, which is like risky, to the bond market, which is less risky. So it's shifting your portfolio to basically less risky investments. So when you're ready to take it out, it's not like, whoa, that thing just tanked and now all my money's gone and I'm supposed to retire tomorrow. So if you look, you guys are young, so you may not remember this as well, but for me, in 2008 was like the big Great Recession, right? I was graduating right around then. It was like, chaos. So if you look at graphs of that, like the stock market tanked. Like people lost 55% of their assets. But if you look over time, like 10 years out, it's like, okay, it recovered and it's back, right? So the reason why the stock market takes time is because you want to give yourself time to ride out those ebbs and flows, that 20% high, that 10% low. You want to get that 10% over time return, right? And it's going to take time. It's going to take decades, right? But if you're all invested in the stocks and you're looking at 2008 and all of your money is in the stock market and you're like, hey, I'm ready to retire today, well, you've just lost 55% of your portfolio. Did I lose you guys? Are you still with me? Are you with me? Okay. All right. So basically, target date funds are shifting your risk portfolio. That's one example. There's you can invest in lots of things, but essentially there's the domestic market. So that's things like the S&P 500. So S&P 500 are like the 500 biggest stocks in the U.S. That's like your Nike and your Amazon and your Apple and all those companies. And essentially by investing in that fund, that's called an index fund, and an index fund is like the average. So you're like, I'm really okay with the average. I feel great about the average. I feel great about the average. Again, I can't tell you what to do. So by investing in the S&P 500, you're saying, I want to invest in all of the domestic parts of the companies of the US that are represented here. Now, the difference is, if you say, hey, I just want to invest in Tesla, like all my money in Tesla, that's really risky because if anything happens to any one company, you're screwed. Whereas when you invest in an index fund or a group of companies or an average, then you can sort of, you guys know what I'm saying. It's an average, right? So an index fund is essentially, I'm like good with the average, I'm cool with the average, I like the average. The average is great. And there's like all sorts of really fun articles, similar to the Women Are Better at Investing Than Men, that basically like, I should pull it up, but it's something along the lines of like, kittens outperform stockbrokers and like elementary school. You can Google it, I'm not making this up. So basically what they did is like they had stockbrokers pick funds to try to outperform the average or the index fund. They said, hey, yeah, I'm gonna beat the average, I'm better than the average. And like, then they also had kittens like step on a computer and like the kittens did better, right? So the point is the average is great. We're fine with the average. The average is delightful. So things like the S&P 500, that's your domestic fund. There's also international funds, and then there's the bond market, and really that's it. So when you think about investing, I like to say think about the stock market, that's risky but more rewards, and then the bond market, which is less risky, less returns, but you want a portfolio. And the way people often figure out how to, I feel like I'm going over. Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. The way people figure out, so like how much am I supposed to invest in which of these things, right? Like you tell me, Ariel, like I don't have a crystal ball. Well, I don't either, and anyone who tells you that they know the future of the stock market, it's like a pyramid scheme, so like back away slowly and slowly. But there is something called a 110 rule of thumb. You guys can look that up if you want. 110 rule of thumb says that you take 110 and you subtract your age. So you guys are babies, 22, right? Yeah. 21. Okay, well, you take 110, you subtract your age, and then the remainder, this is the 110 rule of thumb. I'm just teaching you all these things and you can do what you want with them. I'm not telling you to do them, but the remainder is what, generally a good rule of thumb to invest in the stock market. So if the remainder of the 110 minus your age is 90%, then it would be 90. You're at the point where you want 90% of your portfolio in the stock market. And the reason for that is because you have a long time. Remember, we're going to take advantage of that time. We're going to take advantage of that compound growth. Now, if we're looking at someone who's 50, their portfolio would be a lot. Yeah, all right, shut up. Okay, their portfolio would be, less risky because they're going to need to access those funds sooner, and we don't want them to be in that position where they're trying to access those funds and the stock market takes a dip, as we know it will, because it does and it's normal. We don't want to be in a position where we're trying to withdraw those funds and we're left, hanging because too much of our money is in the stock market. Did I answer? That was a lot. So stocks, bonds. Acorn is an investing tool for those of you that don't know. Any sort of investing is great. So if you pick, Acorn and Elvest, there's all these better health, betterment. Basically, they have recurring transfers for little baby amounts. So it's a good introduction. It's a good step to start to invest. So that's totally good. Keep it up. That's fine. The other thing to keep in mind is, do you guys want? I could stop talking. I don't know. How are we doing?
Yeah, we'll say 2 more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, how about that?
I'm just gonna throw some more information because you're here and you're sitting, and I'm sorry. Okay. So another thing to keep in mind are called expense ratios. So that's basically the cost that something is to you for the fund to be managed. So things like index funds, where we're saying, hey, I just want the average, just give me the average, are really low cost. They're really low expense ratios. Meaning no one's sitting there moving, trying to figure out, okay, this needs to go here, this needs to go here. So your expense ratios are more 0.01%, 0.03%, 0.05%. They're little tiny baby numbers. Now, an actively managed fund is somebody is going in and looking at the fund and being how's this doing? Do we want to move this over here? You're basically paying for the overhead of the fund management. And those can be up to 1-2%. That doesn't sound like a lot. That sounds oh, that's nothing, right? But actually it is. It's a lot over time. Because not only are you losing the 1% or the 2% of your portfolio, but you're losing the opportunity of that to grow. So remember how we talked about how big that penny got? That 1%, 2% does a lot over time because you're not just taking out that fund, the amount currently of what is in your portfolio, but you're also losing that opportunity of growth. So those are called actively managed funds. So if you want to know how, let's say you look up Vanguard S&P 500, and you want to know what the expense ratio is, meaning how much is it costing me to put my money in this fund. You can just Google with the ticker symbol. There's a place called Morningstar. I'm giving you so much information, I'm sorry. You guys can reach out to me afterwards if you're I missed half of that. But yeah, so you can put in the ticker symbol, which is a 5-letter combination, and it'll say this is the expense ratio, and you can be oh wow, that's 1%. I remember Ariel told me that's pretty high. But then if you look at index funds are very low expense, so a lot of people like them. Still with me, sort of? It's okay if you're not, I just fire hose you guys a lot of information, but you're gonna do great, and investing is wonderful, so keep up the great work. Thank you guys.
Thank you.